Kia ora tātou, welcome back to the Wargaming Den. It's been a while, but I've got another game of Kings of War this week. In this week's game, my Ogres take on Gordon's Kingdom of Men army, also known locally as Gordon's Flying Circus. The mission we'll be playing is Push, and we're playing at 2,000 points. Right, let's have a look at my army this week. I've changed things up a wee bit. I've taken the Goblin Scout Regiment, and a bit of a cunning plan here. I've decided to give them the Brew of Sharpness. I tend to use my goblins to throw them in pretending that they're actually more heavily armoured knights. So I'm hoping that the Brew of Sharpness will mean that they might get a few more hits and maybe do a bit of damage before they die. The charge range of 20 inches I think might come in handy as well. The rest of the army is pretty stock standard for me. I've got my Boomer Chariot Troop, 2 Shooter Hordes, Warrior Regiment, the 2 Siegebreaker Hordes, Manny, Boomer Sergeant, a Sergeant with a crossbow, and Nom Nom. So I've got 11 units and 20 unit strength altogether. Let's have a look at Gordon's Flying Circuits. He took 3 regiments of pikes and 3 regiments of fanatics. He also took a regiment of shield wall and gave them the scrying gem. He took 3 generals on winged beasts. One had the blade of slashing, another had a mace of crushing. He also had 3 wizards on Pegasus, one of which had the veil of shadows, and he had a captain as well. So he had 14 units, 27 unit strength, so he outnumbered me both in units and in unit strength. Interesting list in that, you know, all the regiments are quite slow, but he's got that mobility with his 6 flying units. So I was expecting him to be getting in behind my lines quite quickly, using angles to his advantage, and really being a bit of a pain in the ass to face. So it'd be interesting to see how the Ogres were able to deal with this particular list, and I am looking forward to that matchup. So let's move on, have a look at deployment. And just before we begin, here's a shot of one of Gordon's new generals. He's just got some 3D printed Pegasus models. They are really, really nice, and he's done a great job painting them up. Really love the way the armor has come through using the contrast paints. I've not used contrast paints myself, but it's something that I really think I may have to look into, because they do give some really good effects. And another shot of one of the other generals. As I said, the contrast paints have worked really, really well on these guys, and looking forward to facing them. So let's get on with the game. Here we go with deployment. I had to deploy a few units before Gordon because of the scrying gem, and he's got a few other tricks up his sleeve with the captain as well. So I wasn't really worrying too much about Gordon's deployment, to tell you the truth. I'd already decided how I wanted to deploy. The only reasonable lines of sight really for the shooters was out this direction, which meant that, as you can see, Gordon deployed well away from my shooters. I put the shooters down first. I wasn't really worried about that. I was hoping that the shooters would advance anyway, and that they would then contest and maybe be able to pivot on them. Siege breakers and chariots in the center. I had Manny and the warrior regiment on my flanks. What I did forget though was to deploy my Boomer Sergeant. I only realised that partway through turn 1. So I was going to put him here to support my warriors, because I wanted to try and block what I assumed was going to be a lot of flying units trying to outflank me. But because I forgot to deploy him, and by the time I remembered, it was halfway through the turn, I ended up deploying the Boomer Sergeant over here more centrally, just because I didn't want it to look like I was taking an unfair advantage of seeing where Gordon's first turn had gone. So it was a bit of a mistake on my behalf, but worked out in the end. But yeah, as you can see from Gordon's deployment, most of his units are around this area. He's got all his generals, a couple of wizards, most of his pikes and fanatics, and he's got a little holding force over here of fanatics and pikes. The unit of fanatics here, he's given 3 loot counters too. There's a loot counter here, and my shooters have the 3 loot counters here. So my hope in the end is for my shooters to advance over halfway here with their loot counters. I always knew that Gordon was going to try and have a unit out wide, so I was hoping to be able to kind of come through this way and maybe disrupt his plans, but it was going to depend a wee bit on what those flyers got up to as well. So there we go with the deployment. Let's get on and have a look at how turn 1 goes. Gordon got the first turn. He advanced his infantry forward. His flyers flew over the top there as well. And his general came zooming down the flank. His idea, I think, is to try and get in behind my lines here and start causing some mischief. So I'm going to have to deal with that guy pretty quickly, I would think. And just a quick recap of the action. There's my lines, there's the general advancing on his left flank, and he also advanced into the woods and cast Veil of Shadow with the wizard on the Pegasus. My response, I advanced on a broad front, kind of pivoting towards the Kingdom of Men. Over here I moved into the woods. Not a great deal of action. I got a couple of hits on the flying general there, but caused no wounds with the lightning bolts from Nom Nom. Over here I did manage to get a couple of wounds on the fanatics, but otherwise very minimal first round when it came to doing damage to each other. And here we have turn 2 for Kingdoms of Men. Flyers came roaring in behind me to try and turn my flanks. Over here, General charged the Boomer Sergeant, and lightning bolts did 4 wounds on my Ogre warriors over there. Otherwise, not a great deal of damage. Gordon's troops continued to just hang out in the woods. Okay, and the Ogres turn 2. Turned my shooters here so that they could shoot down here at the general who'd got behind my lines. Boomer also turned, shot at him, as did the sergeant, and I managed to waver him. The other shooters advanced, a couple of shots at the fanatics, caused a couple more wounds, maybe 3. The goblin scouts advanced and then turned 90 degrees. They did a full 20-inch move to try and get in to the flank here. The other units of mine advanced, and the warriors advanced over the wall. They were taking damage from lightning bolts, so I decided better off to throw them across the wall, try and get into contact before they were destroyed. And here we go, down the Ogres lines. There's the generals turning in behind me. I'm trying to ignore them as much as I can, but they're going to be a pain. There's another general attacking the Boomer Sergeant there, and the third one in behind. So quite a mobile force. Wizards behind the tower, and there's my Goblin Wolf Riders that have surged forward. And I'm hoping with the Brew of Sharpness, they're going to do a bit of damage. On to turn 3. Gordon used his 3 generals to good effect in this turn. This one was actually wavered by my shooting last turn, but the other 2 generals charged Manny in the flank and in the rear. So poor old Manny was attacked. I think it was 35 dice hitting on 3s or maybe 4s, and he took 13 wounds. Gordon rolled about an 8 on his first nerve check, but only rolled a 4 on the second nerve check. So Manny lived to fight another day. Should have died, didn't, which is pretty much the way Manny likes to operate. And let's have a look at Gordon's turn 2. He moved his pike block to block my goblins, which is over here. Over here, he advanced the fanatics and the pikes out of the woods, and he's got the wizard tucked in behind them there. I think he actually may have moved backwards slightly over here, trying to keep out of charge range of my units, and there was the big combat here where the 2 generals flew into Manny, and the other general here had been wavered by my shooting from over there. And that was Gordon's turn. So how did I respond? You can see the shooters here. They charged the fanatics that had already taken maybe 6 or 7 wounds, destroyed them, and then turned to face the pike. My mistake, though, was the angle here. I didn't take into account that those pike were going to be at the angle they were and come smashing into my flank. Probably couldn't do too much about it. Possibly could have retreated a bit rather than I was trying to set myself up to attack these pikes. I kind of dropped the ball a wee bit and didn't really pay attention to the angles over there. But you live and learn. It just meant that my shooters were in a world of hurt the next turn. And as you can see here, my wolf riders just simply went around, smashed into here, and took out another unit of fanatics while the siege breakers advanced over there. So I got a few units that turn. Turn 3, I was very happy with where things were sitting at the end of that particular turn. But let's move on to turn 4. And a bit of an overview at the end of turn 3 where things were sitting. Shooters and the pike. The wolf riders on the hill now with the siege breakers nearby. And then down here, Manny had managed to kill one of the generals but couldn't get out of the flank of the other one. So from my point of view, good turn. I was happy with where things were sitting. I was very lucky though that Manny was still there. He should have died and potentially those generals just started to roll up my flank. And you can see Nom Nom and the chariots charged one of the other generals there as well. Here we have Gordon's turn 4. The wizard on the Pegasus was just blocking my shooters from supporting the other shooters. These shooters didn't last. They got a unit of pike in the flank. There's 30 attacks sitting on 4s and another unit of pike in the front. So they pretty much exploded, which was predictable really. And here we go, the end of the Kingdom of Men turn. The shooters have been destroyed over there by the pikes. They grabbed the objectives as well, so they've got 3 objectives. The general killed Manny, and then over here, pikes went in against siege breakers, didn't do anything. The Goblin Wolf Riders have been attacked by the captain, it's just out of sight, and also a wizard, and they did 3 wounds on the goblins.
End of turn 4, just taking out the wizard there. The goblins took out another wizard over here and it turned 180 degrees. Siege breakers charged into the flank of pike and took them out, and the other siege breakers withdrew and sidestepped. So things are looking better over there. Nom Nom did 1 wound on the general there. Boomer Sergeant killed another wizard, and the Boomer Chariots killed another general there. So the humans are starting to melt a wee bit. But they've actually got 6 counters at present, and we are just about to start turn 5.
Okay, and so here you can see it at the end of the ogre turn 4. We've taken out wizard here, got another wizard here, got some pike there, another wizard there, and a flying general there. So from my point of view, it was a very good turn. Unfortunately though, there are 3 tokens here, and they have 3 tokens here, so Gordon's got 6 tokens. I'm trying to get that token with my sergeant. So I'm going to have to pull something out on turn 5 or 6 if I'm going to be able to recover, really, because Gordon's just starting to throw units in to block what I want to do.
Turn 5 from the humans, the seesaws continue. The sergeant survived 2 pike in the grill here. I lost the goblins to the captain, and I lost the other siege breakers, got taken out by the general plus the fanatics. So I have very few units left. There's 3 tokens here, there's 1 still there, and there are 3 tokens over here, which I really don't know how I'm going to manage to get hold of.
And an overview. As you can see, the pike over here, they've got 3 tokens and badly wounded the sergeant, lost the goblins. The other 3-point objective is over here. So Gordon is controlling 6 of the objectives and just putting forward units to slow me down, and he's trying to protect the fanatics tucked in behind the tower there. I'm not really sure how I'm going to get those guys in time. So things are not looking good at present for the ogres.
Okay, turn 5 is over. I shot the pike there, did a couple of wounds. I wounded and wavered the general there. I killed some guys there. I'm trying to chase the fanatics that are carrying the counter, but I'm not going to catch them, I don't think. So unless I do something really sneaky, I think Gordon's probably got it, but we will see on turn 6.
And there we have a bit of an aerial overview of the situation. So as I said, Gordon's controlling the objectives. He's got 3 here. He's got another 3 here. He's tucked in behind the hill. I can't really get at them. He's using his other heroes, etc., to slow me down. This shooter here, they came moving around this way. The thought being on turn 6, I wanted to be in position to attack those pike and grab those objectives back. Unfortunately, I probably moved a wee bit too close to the closer of the 2 pike units, which meant that on turn 6 Gordon was actually able to block the angles that I wanted to use. So I should have probably come out a wee bit wider as it turned out, but Gordon played well. He threw the units he needed to in to block what I was trying to do at that point.
Gordon's turn 6, he wavered my sergeant. He moved his pike to protect the other pikes. I can't charge them by the looks of it. And he moved his fanatics with the other objective over here. So currently it's 7-0, and I don't know what the hell I'm going to do.
Desperation stuff on my turn 6. Threw the boomer chariots into the pike, hoping to destroy them and claim the objectives back, but unfortunately didn't happen. The shooters smashed into the other pike block though, killed them. So if we have a turn 7, I can probably win it because I'm set up to actually take those pikes out and claim 4 of the objectives. I can't probably get the objectives with the fanatics on the other side. Gordon has been too sneaky there, and I'm not going to be able to run them down. So 50% chance of getting a turn 7 and thereby having a reasonable shot at least pulling back a draw, maybe even grabbing win, but unfortunately I rolled a 2, so it ended up being a 6-0 to Gordon in a really close, fun, exciting game. There we have it. 6-0 to Gordon's Kingdoms of Men. Great game, thoroughly enjoyed it. Wow, that was a great game. It was all about the objectives, which the game really is. Made a mistake with my shooters, letting them get attacked by the pike in the side and thereby giving up the tokens, which was a bit of a dumb thing to do. Manny surviving the attacks on turn 2 against the generals was kind of pivotal for me as well. Meant that he stayed in the game and took out one of the generals. Without that, I think Gordon would have swung around and rolled me up pretty quickly. Those flying units are a real pain to face, and I hadn't really faced that many flyers before. My deployment probably was a bit linear to take that into account. Probably my MVP unit, I would say, is these guys down here, my Goblin Scouts. I added the Brew of Strength to them, which is probably a bit overkill, but I figured speed 10, hitting on a 4+, only becoming a 3+, they could become a bit of a threat. I've made the mistake of trying to use them as knights a wee bit too often, so I thought, well, why not make them a bit tougher? And as it turned out, they were actually really quite effective and something to watch out for. So I think I'll definitely be running those again. But as I said, it was a great game, swung both ways at various times, but in the end, Gordon managed to take out the game and the win. Interesting point though, I had about 1100 points worth of units left on the table at the end. Gordon may have had 500 points if he was lucky, but it's not about points on the table, it's about objectives, and at the end of the day, it's how Gordon won it. He kept his eye on the objectives and controlled them at the end of turn 6, so very well played, Gordon. Look forward to playing the Flying Circus again soon.